Gentle wind carries me and I soar so high. I fly with these wings. I can see only blue sky. So goodbye, let me fly so high. I'll fly high beyond the blue sky. Don't be sad, no. Dry your eyes and look for me beyond the skies where I fly so high. I'll fly high beyond the blue sky. Bye bye.
What we have gotten is unbelievable. We've had food, we've had masses, we've had plants, we've had people helping. And I have so many cards and so many thank yous to send out, I can't even keep up with it. So anyway, I love you all. Thank you. So we'll try to, I know a lot of you are standing, I'm very sorry, but we have a couple of videos that we're going to show. My son's going to start with a tribute that he made, and then our children are going to come up and say a few words. And we have a couple of speakers. And then when we show, he had a retirement movie that was made 21 or 22 years ago when Doug was 60 and retired from Tigers that his nephew made. And anyway, he told me, I want that shown at my celebration of life. I want people to cry at my memorial, and I want them to laugh at my celebration. So we're going to do a little bit of crying today and a little bit of laughing and celebrate his life. Thank you. Okay, Jamie, Ryan, Danielle, Frankie, Taylor. Okay, wheel this out a little bit. Okay, all right. All right.
Thank you all for coming. On behalf of my mom, my sister Jamie and Danielle, my nieces Frankie and Taylor, we appreciate you guys being here. For those of you that knew my dad and some of you that didn't are here in support of us, we thank you. My mom was right. I was having a conversation with my dad a few weeks before he passed, and we were driving down to visit my sister Jamie, and he had mentioned that he wanted people to cry a little bit and then laugh. So me and my cousin Steve worked on this video, and it's a tribute to my dad, and there's some Kleenex on the tables, but after that we're gonna laugh and enjoy the rest of the okay?
Right. Can you shut off the background music?
Yeah.
Yeah, how do we do it?
They're good.
I'll get it.
Thank you. Okay.
Power on. Aux input mode.
Samantha Cortese reports.
We have confirmed 2 people have died in a plane crash at the Torrance airport. The FAA says the plane crashed while attempting to land. Now, we do not know the names of the people on board. The NTSB.
Doug's voicemail. Sorry I can't get to the phone right now. Why don't you leave a message? I'll call you back as soon as possible. And isn't this a great day? We're going to make America great again. So long.
At the tone, please record your message.
It's perfect outside, it's like God let me dial up the weather. Got the whole crew here, I ain't seen some of them in forever. It's one of those never forget it, better stop and take it in kind of scenes. Everything's just right, yeah, except for one thing. You should be here, standing with your arm around me here, cutting up, cracking a cold beer, saying cheers. Hey y'all, it's sure been a good year. It's one of those moments that's got your name written all over it. And you know that if I had just one wish, it'd be that you didn't have to miss this. You should be here.
Douglas, it's Mike D. What's going on? Hey, I wanted to ask you a question. I saw there was a bad accident over at Torrance Airport this morning. Let's see if you know anything about that. Anyway, give me a call. Bye.
Just call when you land.
Don't you? They say now you're in a better place, and I would be too if I could see your face. You should be here, standing with your arm around me here, cutting up, cracking a cold beer, saying cheers. Hey y'all, it's sure been a good year. It's one of those moments that's got you.
Damn it, Doug. It's not a great day. Man, I just heard the news. This is Rick Shaw. I'm just so devastated by this. Thank you for everything, Doug. I'm going to miss you a lot. See you on the other side, buddy.
I had to be like this. I love you so much, Poppy, and Ellen. You did the best grandma ever. And I'm going to practice on my golf swing for you, okay? I love you. Bye.
Yeah, this is one of those moments. It's got your name written all over it. And you know that if I had just one wish, it'd be that you didn't have to miss this. Oh, you should be here. You should be here. You should be here.
It's Captain Doug Happ signing off.
Okay, and that's the end of the crime.
I think you need this, Ryan.
What?
Did you turn that on?
NTSB are investigating. KTLA Samantha Cortese reports.
You want to watch it again? Okay, is this one?
I think your speaker.
Want to come up? Oh, that? That's not part of it.
No?
Power on. Aux input mode.
Check. That's not the picture. Anyway, we're gonna do a little toast. But first of all, my sisters are gonna tell a little story about how my parents met, and the middle of his life, and then I got a little story for you. So make sure you fill up your glasses.
Yeah. Okay.
This isn't working.
Oh, it's not. Okay. So my parents met in a building in Newark, and my dad was supposed to take, I think, my mom's roommate on a date, and she went out with someone else, and my mom was homesick, and he came to pick the date up, and that's how they met. And there was a letter that my brother just showed me that my mom wrote to her family on my dad's birthday in '67. Unbeknownst to my dad, my mom had everything planned out. That she had met Mr. Wright, and they were going to live in LA, even though my dad didn't know that yet. And and she had it all planned out, and it went according to her plan. They bought a wonderful apartment building on Avenue G, and which my mom never let my dad live down for selling, and then a house on Sapphire, and that's 52 years later, here we are. So,
and then he got into riding motorcycles, and I remember after he retired, he showed up at Super Bowl, and he had all his motorcycle buddies with him, and he had his Dreamcatcher helmet, and he ended up getting in a horrible accident. I don't know if you all remember, but he almost died, and it was very scary for all of us. And he was like a miracle. He went from they didn't know if he was going to live, and he amazed all the doctors and was walking and came back and so
yeah. After that, he started living his life like it was his last day, and just started appreciating everything. He'd always he'd do everything for the girls, come over and help them, and just tell us he loved us. And that accident was, kind of a blessing because we got to spend some quality time with him. But as I was saying before, when I was going down to visit Jamie, he let me in on like the good stories, like how he went to jail one time, those kind of stories. So I'd like to share with you the type of guy my dad was. So he'd do anything for somebody. And my cousin Steven here that did the video, he bought these calling card machines. He thought they were going to be a big thing, but none of the stores wanted to put those up on their walls. So he had 3 of these things. So he sold one to this guy in Texas, right? And this guy promised to pay him back later, but he never did. So my dad flew down to Texas, and he already had some ammunition about this guy, but he drove by his house, and then he gets back to the hotel, and he tells me he sticks the remote control to his throat, and he goes, "This is Mr. White. You owe DeLacy money. Pay him or else." And this guy ran down Western Union, him the money, and then this guy calls him back. He's like, "I did it," and he's like, "I'm coming to talk to you. What room are you?" And my dad's like, 1423. And I go, "Did you wait for him, Dad?" And he's like, "Yeah, I waited for him for about 30 seconds, and then I checked into the hotel down the street. But that's the type of guy my dad was. I mean, he'd do anything for somebody. So we're going to say a cheers to him. If everybody can raise their glasses. Oh. To lying, to cheating, and stealing. If you're going to lie about your name and age. If you're gonna steal death, and if you're gonna cheat death, and if you're gonna steal a woman's heart. Thank you, guys.
Okay, so hello everyone, thank you for being here today. This is probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do, and the one thing that I've never wanted to have to do. But for the same reason that you all showed up here today, it's why I need to do this, because my dad deserves to be remembered and honored in the best of ways. And well, we all know I was his favorite, so here I stand. I'm kidding. My dad, I'm sure that we can agree what an honor it has been to have known this man. He seemed to do everything right in his life. He made smart decisions, he planned ahead, provided for his family, kept up with his friendships, treated everyone with respect, didn't leave unfinished business, loved his wife, worked hard, knew how to have fun. He needed a little work on his jokes, but that's okay. He did homework with us, he coached sports. And I don't know if you saw the picture in there, but those shorts that he wore when he coached my soccer team, that is one thing he did not do right at all. I'm pretty sure Richard Simmons filed a missing report for those shorts, but that's okay. This man was damn near perfect. Of course, it's only obvious where I get it from. My dad taught us many valuable life lessons. In fact, very recently, he came out to my house in Temecula with my brother and sister to help build some horse stalls. He stayed the night, and he came back the next weekend by himself to help me build a wash rack. He spent the night both times, and after that first weekend, I told David that never, with all the places I've lived, had my parents stayed the night at my house, and that was one of my proudest moments, that not only did he stay the night, but he wanted to come back the next weekend and stay again. But it was during that weekend, we took some trips to Home Depot, and he was playing me some songs that he liked. And we had some great little talks about a few different things. And one thing that I told him was how incredible I think my mom is. How difficult it must have been for her to take care of the three of us 24/7. While he was gone for 2-week trips, she had to cook, clean, take us to school, do homework, discipline, laundry, baths, everything. And then he would walk in the door, and we would be so excited, like he was the hero, especially when he had a suitcase full of gifts from everywhere he went. And he would need his laundry done and want to eat dinner and play with us. And Mom would never get a break or any recognition for all that she did. And my dad looked at me and said, "You should just tell her that." So I'm telling you now, Mom, how much I appreciate all of that you did for us. But it was so simple for him to say that. You should just tell her, because that's how my dad lived. He kept all of his relationships in good standing, made everyone feel important and as if they each had a special relationship with him, because they did. That is one of the best lessons that he taught me. Of course, my siblings and I were very lucky to have our parents. I mean, there shouldn't be any doubts in their parenting skills when you look at how great we all turned out. I mean, how great Taylor turned out and Frankie now. I meant to say the grandkids, but they do say it skips a generation, I think. I could go on forever about how great this man was, but I know there are others who want to say some things, so I'm going to end by bringing your attention to this portrait. I have a story about this portrait that my talented cousin Stephen painted. It captures very perfectly my dad's good looks, and the man we're here to honor. But at some point, my dad started trying to give this to each of his kids. Of course, none of us wanted a big picture of our dad staring at us in whatever house we were living at in our living room. he would wait until all the presents were opened at Christmas and say, "Oh, there's one more," and pick one of us to give it to, or it was the grand finale prize, and we would think, "Oh, I'm getting something good," and out he would walk with the portrait. You know, so a couple of years ago on Easter, I won the big money egg on his egg hunt. My sister won the grand prize egg. And of course, here comes the grand prize. My dad was his portrait. And, you know, "Oh, Dad," you know. And David suggested, "You should get that portrait." And so I traded Danielle the money for the portrait. And my dad said, "What? You really want my portrait?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And he said, "Great, I'll load it in your car." and I was so glad to have done that, because every time he walked in my house, he would be like, "Oh, my portrait." He was so happy to see it up there. You know, and now I have to have 24/7 surveillance on it and security, because I'm pretty sure my brother and sister are planning a heist, but I don't know, so that's why the ropes are there. But it is these things, and the fact that he was able to see me get my daughter back, that I know that my dad was proud of me. And it reminds me of the true story about one time that my dad gave me $1 because, you know, I was the smartest kid. I traded it for 2 shiny quarters because, you know, everyone knows 2 is better than 1. Then I took the quarters to Tim, and, you know, he's a little slow. He gave me 3 dimes. I guess he didn't know that 3 is more than 2. Just then, along came Rory, and because he's a little senile sometimes, he gave me 4 nickels for my 3 dimes. You know, 4 is more than 3. Then I took the nickels to Nancy and Gertz, and you know, those sweeties, they gave me 5 pennies. And we all know 5 is more than 4. And then I went to show my dad. And he got red in his cheeks and closed his eyes and shook his head because he was too proud to speak.
Can you guys hear me? Hi everyone, I'm Taylor. I'm Doug's oldest granddaughter. Thank you so much for being here today. I can speak on behalf of my entire family when I say we are so blessed to have each of you in this room to share your love, your connection, your memories, and your sincere appreciation for my grandpa. He was truly the best man I've ever known. We're gonna try to get through this. It's not common for kids to have such a close relationship. Thank you. With their grandparents, but Frankie and I have been so lucky to grow up so close to our Grammy and Poppy. And I wouldn't trade a moment, my 27 years with them for the entire world. My grandpa was more like a second father figure to me. Growing up, he was my adventure buddy, the person who took me out to see the seals in the harbor on the blow-up kayak, who spent summers with me at Seaside Lagoon, who walked with me to see the ducks in Wilderness Park, who helped me with every school project, who taught me to drive a car, and kept my first little accident, actually at the hangar, a secret for many, many years, who drove across the country with me to move me into my college dorm, who answered my daily call for the last 9 years, and called to check in on days I didn't call him. He was the man who came to Tennessee recently just to hang lights in my backyard, help me with handiwork around the house just because he said he could. He was an incredible storyteller, the best jokester, the most competitive card player, pretty decent dancer, and because I feel like he's listening right now, he had the fullest head of hair and no balding whatsoever. 2 years ago, I wrote him a letter. I wanted to share parts of it with you all today, as I feel it's the best way to kind of encapsulate my relationship with him. So here that goes. Poppy, I feel like I've never been very vocal about my emotions or my gratitude for you. But I know how short life is, and I would never want you to wonder where my heart is, or question my love or appreciation for you. I want you to know how much you mean to me, how heartbroken I am at your thought that I won't get to have you in my life forever. You are my hero. I think a lot about how different my life, we lost it again, how different my life would be without you and Grammy there to support me and love me unconditionally over the years. Together, you've protected me, encouraged me, inspired me, and motivated me. You've given me a lifetime of memories and a forever home. You've set such a positive example for me and have set such an influential man in my life. The way that you love Grammy and our family has always been unmatched, and you set the bar so high. I wouldn't be me without you. Thank you for always making me feel special, even in times when I don't always make you feel the same. You're 79 years old today, and I hope for many more years to come, filled with never enough memories to last a lifetime. After my grandpa's passing, we found a letter that he began to write me as well. And today I share part of that with you. Taylor, as you are reading this, my ship has probably sailed from these earthy waters, but I want you to know that I had a beautiful time. This alone has brought us peace, comfort, and a sense of happiness, knowing that while things may not always happen how we expect, the only thing that is guaranteed in life is that life is not guaranteed. My grandpa lived each day as if it were his last, knowing just this. If you leave with anything today, know that my grandpa lived a true American dream, as he always talked about. He was so proud of the life that he created, and because of every single person in this room, his legacy lives on, and I hope to continue his story with others. Let us all live every single moment to the fullest and remember to have a beautiful time along the way. So thank you all for being here. Cheers.
If you might have known that Poppy liked to tell a lot of dirty jokes, but since Grammy says that I can't say him up here, I decided to go look through his dad joke book, which we gave him, and find the circled one, which says, why are tennis players bad at relationships? It's because love means nothing to them.
My name is Tim Chisholm. I was friends with Doug for a long time, and I'd like to do something unusual. I'm going to start this talk at the end. I'm going to give you my last sentence first. Once in a lifetime, a man comes along that you can trust. A man that would lay down across the railroad tracks for you. A man that would give you the shirt off his back. But wait a minute. Those aren't my words. Those are the words of a friend of mine. And to take you to hear his words, we're going to back up in time exactly 16 years, almost to the day, to this very room. The occasion was my last flight. I landed here at LAX. My wife arranged a surprise party in this room, and my friend Doug Happ came up to this very podium and had some words. But instead of telling you what he had to say, I'll let you see for yourself.
I see my ex-boss out here. I can't use that. Well, anyway, now I've got. Before I get into this, folks, I just want to tell you that, once in a lifetime, a man comes along. I want this to be serious. A man comes along that you can trust. A man that would lay down across the railroad tracks. A man that would give you the shirt off his back. A man that you could call a real friend. And so before I get into roasting, I just want to come out and shake his hand and give him a hug. Right? You want me?
Bob in the back. And I just wanted to start out, and that will be the end, but I wanted to start to remind you how much fun Doug was. Now I'll go to the beginning. I knew Doug before, but I really got to know Doug in 1987. In July of 1987, I was 40 years old, and Flying Tigers bought a new fleet of aircraft that they were going to fly domestically, 727s. And they hired me to be the domestic chief pilot. I was totally unqualified for the job. I had no management training at all. But I lived close, which when you're based here, not many of the candidates can do. And I was willing to take the job, and I was sick of commuting to Kennedy. So I became the domestic chief pilot. So there was three chief pilots. There was Pat Patterson, the Atlantic chief pilot based in New York. Oh, thanks, John. There was Doug Happ, the Pacific chief pilot based about half a mile east of here in the building on the same street. Excuse me. It's water. And then me, the new domestic chief pilot. Came to work, I didn't know anything. The man that hired me, my boss, Don Pritchard, the vice president, he gave me no training. And I came to work, and I soon learned that even though I didn't know anything, we had real authority. I'd been working about 2 weeks when the vice president called me in his office and said, Tim, he says, Flying Tigers, we're going to hire 87 pilots. And since they'll be the most junior pilots, they'll be on your airplane, so you hire them. I said, how soon? He said, now. That was the end of the conversation. There was no other instruction, none. So I went back, that's when I realized how much responsibility I had. I went back and I told this to Doug. And basically at this time, I was looking to Doug for my training. And Doug told me he didn't have any training either. So our pilots didn't know it. Hundreds of pilots that worked, but they didn't know it. But we were just winging it and doing the best we could. By the way, we did hire those 87 pilots that year, and that's with the help of a lot of people that are in this room right now. Thank you, John. Doug and I worked hard, and we come to work every day, and we never knew what we were going to be doing that day. We always had a plan, but it usually didn't work out. Like, there was a lot of curveballs. So like, for example, the hiring got thrown in, or an airplane would have a mechanical problem, or there would be a delay, and there were scheduling issues, or somebody had trouble in training, or there was people issues, or safety issues, or airport issues at one of the many airports we flew to, or always the city of El Segundo was always on us about our pilots making too much noise by taking off and making early left turns over their citizens. But the one thing that kept us sane was that we were both runners. We ran together. We ran together at lunch. We ran together at lunch hundreds of times. We had a shower and lockers down in the mechanics area down below, and we'd run together at lunch. And that's where we did our talking. That's when we did our figuring. That's where we had our business meetings. And after lunch, we'd either stop and get a sandwich, or if we didn't run, we'd go to a restaurant. And like I said, Doug was fun. We would go to, this was before credit cards. This is when we used cash. Frankie, you probably don't know what cash is, but that's something we used to use to pay for things. But Doug and I would go to great lengths. We'd split the bill, but we'd go to great lengths to try and screw the other person out of the penny or the nickel and the change that came back. And sometimes it was so confusing, we didn't know if we won or lost. We worked together in the office for 8 years. And the only way I could have done that job for so long is because of Doug and the wonderful people that we worked with. And the first secretary of was Doreen Kasprinsky. After T-Day, she was replaced by Lori Miller. Stand up, Lori. And Lori was engaged to Mike, and our office turned into Wedding Central. And Doug and I learned more about wedding planning than we knew about airplanes for the next year. We were so happy when we went to their wedding and they got married. But we couldn't pay her enough, so she left. But when the flight attendants were fired, Terry Lee came to work for us, as did Judy Kettle. And then when the FedEx shut down the publications department in the old Tiger building, there was a new position that we created called Flight Ops Specialist. And we had Sherry Weber come to work. Sherry, where are you? There she is. Now, a lot of you know Sherry, and you won't believe this, but when we offered Sherry the job, she was afraid she couldn't do it. She didn't have the confidence to take it. She didn't. Those of you that know her now know that that's hard to believe. But because this is a celebration, I want to give you some examples of the fun times we had together. Early after I was a chief pilot, we had a chief pilots meeting in Anchorage, and Doug took the Marie, and we went to Anchorage. And I told you we were runners, so we were going to go out running, and a lot of people were there, managers. I think it was a FedEx deal, so we're meeting the FedEx people. And so Doug and I are going to go out running. And Anchorage is a beautiful place to run, lots of running paths, bike paths. And the people that weren't runners wanted to come along and ride bikes with us, including Marie. So we went to the bicycle rental shop near the hotel to rent the bikes. And this couple had a little business in their yard, and they had the bicycles in the side yard, and the office was down a few steps in the basement underneath. So Marie picked out her bicycle and went down to the basement and was filling out the form, name, address, color of bike. And she couldn't remember the color of her bike. So she starts walking to the door to see it, and it's not very far. And the conversation goes like this. Doug's outside. Doug, what color is my bike? Which one's yours? The red one. On that same trip, they took us fishing. They put us into turboprop seaplanes, and we went on the Kenai Peninsula, and they had arranged for us fishing in small boats with guides and all the equipment and everything. And I can't remember if it was 2 pilots to a guide or 3, but anyway, Doug and I were in the same boat, and we're out on rivers. And Doug's a fisherman. I don't know anything about fishing. And we go out on the river, and it's quite a rapid river. And we drive for at least 30 minutes to get out to where the salmon are. And we get out there, and the guide says to Doug, who's in the front, he says, Doug, grab the anchor. Doug takes the anchor, throws it over. And the guide says, Doug, I was going to have you hook it to the line first. So we went back to the lodge, and Doug bought the beer that night. We did more fishing, by the way, fun things. Harvey Watt, some of you remember Harvey Watt, used to sell insurance. He put on a fishing seminar for all the airline chief pilots and vice presidents once a year up in Canada, and Doug and I went twice. We took his Cessna 414, 3 Delta Quebec, to Magdalena Bay, Baja one time to go fishing on Ned Wallace's fishing boat. We left it for 3 days at the dirt strip there, and when we came back, it was being guarded by the military, who searched it for drugs when we got back. Fortunately, we're here. So. Doug and I went to, just quickly, we went to Honolulu for an Airline Transport Association meeting with all the chief pilots. And the Delta chief pilot had access to a sailboat, and he invited everybody to come out for a sail on the sailboat. Oh, fun, this is great. He invited, I didn't know anything about boats then. He invited way too many people. There was no life vest. And it turns out he didn't know how to sail. We went out, it wasn't that smooth. We hit a buoy not once, but twice. We were so happy to be off of that. But in November of 1988, we went to Williamsburg, Virginia for another ATA meeting. And Doug took his family. And we toured Colonial Williamsburg. If you're not familiar with it, it's 300 acres of 18th century replica town, complete with people in period costumes, using period tools, living just like they did then. And kids were really impressed. Right, Jamie?
Yes.
Yeah.
From what I can see.
What Jamie remembers, the only thing Jamie remembers is that I would take her, she's just a little thing, and I would put my hands over her eyes and walk her around blindfolded and run her off of curbs and into tree stumps, and that's what she remembers.
And I remember how to spell your name. G-Y-M-C-C-Y-S-C-Y-N.
Very good. Yes.
That's not a name, that's a bunch of letters.
Yeah.
I have to tell you about in the time before cell phones, we had beepers. And Doug and I, at one time, we hosted the chief pilots meeting here in Los Angeles. And we have the tallest building on the airport. We have a 10-story building. So to impress the other chief pilots of the airlines, we had the meeting on the 10th story. And so we're having the meeting, and Doug has his beeper. And Doug had to use the bathroom. And after he finishes his job, he's standing up from the toilet, and the beeper comes off his belt and falls in the toilet. There's nobody else in the bathroom. What can he do? He has to reach in and get the beeper. He goes over to the sink, and he turns on the water. He's washing his hands, and he has a stream of water going into the beeper. They're not waterproof. Washing the beeper, and the door opens, and Jim Cronin walks in, the president of Flying Tigers. Sees Doug washing his beeper. He said, I don't think a word was spoken. One really fun memory for me was Doug was at our house when my father read my son, who's here, the letter offering him the job with flying as a pilot with FedEx. Actually, my father tried to read the letter, but he couldn't do it. So he gave it to my mom, and she read it. And that was 28 years ago. And Doug's picture, handing the letter to my son, shaking his hand, is still in my home office right now. And Doug and I flew together a lot. We had fun flying together. I'll just tell you a few. In 1995, we were flying the 747, and we had a charter to French Guiana. We were carrying huge satellites to get launched out of French Guiana. So it's a 9-hour trip there. Doug flew it, and I'm going to fly the 9-hour trip back to LAX. Second officer was Sandy Geller, and the loadmaster was Eric Kruak. Where's Eric? You remember this, Eric? So we fly to French Guiana, offload it, and lay over. And as we're leaving French Guiana, that's my leg, and Doug's talking on the radio. And he tells ATC, he's got this great idea. Instead of just taking off and flying back, well, just a few miles offshore are 3 little islands that you might have seen in the movie Papillon with Steve McQueen and Dustin Hoffman, Devil's Island. And Doug says, let's go out there and circle these and take some pictures, and then we can go. Yeah, okay, great idea. So we tell ATC that, and they clear us to go out there at 4,000 feet. And we go out there at 4,000, and Doug said, we can't get any pictures here at 4,000 feet. Let's drop down to 1,000 feet. I said, no, we can't. He says, there's no radar here, this is French Guiana. So we drop down to 1,000 feet, and they call on the radio, is it FedEx, was it then? FedEx, climb immediately, climb. And Doug keys the mic, and he says, we'll climb as soon as we're done taking pictures. And I could just see my pilot license being being shredded. We went to Toronto to look at a Ward Air 747 passenger airplane. Doug and I went to Honolulu to do a high-speed taxi test in a plane that had shaken apart on the runway, and all the instruments came out of the engineer's panel. We flew 747s into Santa Barbara together for maintenance. That's like landing a 747 on an aircraft carrier. But a lot of people, Doug and I did, a lot of others did also. But I have to tell you that the one story was when certain airports have certain things about them that require the pilots to know just a little bit more. They call them special qualification airports. And before a pilot can fly there, they have to go to this book and look at the movie or whatever and brief themselves on this special qualification airport. Well, San Francisco had to get this special qualification airport for some reason, I don't remember. And the company that we would hire to do it, Clay Lacey, would charge Flying Tigers $45,000. And Jay Barnwell was the chief pilot at the time. This would have been FedEx. Jay Barnwell was the chief pilot. He was out, and he said, and this made Doug mad. Doug said, no, we can do this ourselves and save thousands of dollars. And he had a Cessna 310 at the time. So we got in Doug's twin Cessna, and Doug's flying. Jay Barnwell, the chief pilot, is in the right seat, and Jay, it's just after Christmas. Jay has proudly got his brand new Sony video recorder, probably with film, not digital, but he's going to record the approach. And I'm in the back seat. And we go up to San Francisco, and everything's going swimmingly, and we start down the approach, and Jay gets his camera, and he plugs it into the cigarette lighter, and we're going down final, and there's a big poof, bang, smoke. And Jay had plugged his 12-volt recorder into Doug's 24-volt airplane. Anyway, I think they hired Clay Lacey to go get the picture. The very last passenger flight, when we had flight attendants, the very last passenger flight, we didn't fly it, but we went on it from Los Angeles to St. Louis. And there was a big party that night with all the flight attendants, and all the flight attendants are all dead-heading back to Los Angeles the next day. Well, Doug and I flew that flight. I flew it, Doug was the co-pilot. And there was some alcohol involved in the flight attendants coming back, because when we landed, they'd be out of a job. I remember for landing, not one of them had a seatbelt on. Okay, that was their thing. But they decided, taxiing in, and we heard this, that before we got to the gate, they were all going to blow all the emergency escape slides and slide down. So I'm taxiing slowly, and Doug Happ got on the PA and gave a speech telling them what great jobs they had done over the decades and what great legacy they were leaving. And basically he talked them out of doing that, which saved a lot of broken bones, if nothing else. But I have to tell you, I mentioned fun people that we worked with, but the pilots that we worked with are fun too. And I'll just give you a couple of examples. It's not here today, but we had a co-pilot named Richard Kiefer. Some of you know Richard Kiefer, and he married Deanna, who worked at Tigers. And they announced that they were going to have their first child. And when the sonogram came, they found out it was going to be a boy. Doug went crazy. He says, names it. Their last name's Kiefer. My name, by the way, they call me Tim, but my actual name is John. It's confusing. So Doug decides that the name of the baby should be Douglas Jonathan Kiefer. And I decide that the name of the baby should be Jonathan Douglas Kiefer, because that obviously sounds a lot better. Right, Lord? Yes. Yeah, thank you. So when the baby comes, I got a letter. I was so excited. Deanna and Richard Kiefer are proud to announce the arrival of their newest crew member, Jonathan Douglas Kiefer. Yes. And they're rushing in to show Doug. He says, wait, I got one too. Brianna and Richard Kiefer are proud to announce the arrival of their newest crew member, Douglas Jonathan. It turned out they named the kid Garrett. And then I think this was Doug's favorite. One of pilots, John Engelhardt, he's not here. He left this note on Doug's desk. Doug and Tim, when I returned home from my last trip with good news, my little girl asked me who my boss was. I told her I have lots of bosses. When I was leaving for this trip, she handed me this letter to give to my boss, John Engelhardt. So I'm going to read you the letter. Dear Dad's boss, I wanted to tell you thanks for taking an unhappy person and making him happy. When I grow up, I want to have a boss just like you. You made my whole family very happy just in a few words, and when my dad isn't not happy, the whole family isn't happy. I admire you for that. P.S. Thanks again. Sincerely, your friend, Jennifer Engelhardt. Yeah. But the times weren't all fun. On T-Day, which was the merger between Federal Express and Flying Tigers, we instantly had 1,000 pilots that were Flying Tiger pilots that were now working under FedEx rules, and they didn't know the rules. And we were just learning the rules. We found out we had, as I told you, 3 chief pilots for about 1,000 Tiger pilots, and Federal Express had about a dozen flight managers for the same number of pilots. And here, I decided I'm going to tell you about one typical call that would come in, and Doug got this call. This is a call from the duty officer to Doug after the merger. We had a 747 flight from Chicago to Los Angeles. The captain was a captain named Matty Devine. Now, some of you know Matty. He's a really nice guy, very smart, very nice. But what he is not is physically fit. So Matty was in the 747 cockpit, and the Federal Express ramp agent came up and said, "Captain, plane's ready to go." And Matty said, "Okay, well, as soon as we get our catering, we'll go." And the poor agent didn't know what to do, so he went down and he called Memphis, and Memphis said, "Get word," and he comes, the ramp agent comes back and says, "Captain, you're wanted on the phone with the duty officer." Now, there was no cell phones in these days. So Matty had to go down 2 flights of stairs, go over to operations, up 1 flight of stairs. "Yeah?" Says Captain Devine. "Yeah?" "Well, this is the Federal Express duty officer, so-and-so." "Yeah?" Says, "I understand your plane's ready to go, but you don't have your catering." "Yeah?" "Well, Captain, at Federal Express, we don't delay airplanes for catering." "Oh. Well, do you know how to fly a 747? "No." "Well, then I guess you're screwed." So that's the kind of call that Doug got. So, okay, Doug, Chief Pilot, fix that. Yeah. Right. We had, on February 19th of 1989, we had a 747 Flight 66 crash at Kuala Lumpur. Our vice presidents didn't go. Doug went. His friends were the pilots. Mechanic killed in that crash, and it was Doug that had to deal with it. I told you we hired pilots. One of the pilots we hired was named Auburn Calloway. Hired him at Flying Tigers, fired him 2 weeks later for reasons that aren't important here. And after the merger, we saw that he was working at Federal Express. Well, he couldn't have got hired there if he'd have been honest on his application. So we called Federal Express and said, "Hey, you have this pilot there, and he obviously lied on his application." And they told us, well, they explained to us, "You're Flying Tigers, we're Federal Express." And they basically said, "If we want your help, we'll ask for it." At any rate, Auburn Calloway, for those of you that don't know, he's the one that went on to hijack the the DC-10 and try and crash it into the buildings in Memphis. I always wonder if the 9/11 hijackers got their ideas from Auburn. In 1992, we had the Rodney King LA riots. And you may not remember, but the streets here were empty. We were not supposed to be out. Well, we had a passenger plane full of people, no flight attendants, no crew. And so Doug and I are in the office late at night, calling the people that we knew close to the airport, getting them to drive up here, things like that. The support that we had from Memphis was interesting. Fred Smith, the head of Federal Express, he didn't like 747s. So if you were an up-and-coming Federal Express officer, you wanted to work on the planes that Fred Smith liked, and that wasn't the 747s. So we were on our own out here. So we had a boss named, his first name was Cleve. You might remember this, Lori. There was a Jimmy Buffett song at the time. It was, if the phone doesn't ring, it's me. And we changed it to, if the phone doesn't ring, it's Cleve. But just for an example, on opening, we were tasked, Doug and I were tasked to open up scheduled routes to China. We'd had flights to China before, but they were occasional charters. But now we're going to have crews flying in there all the time. And to do that, we had to up the game. For example, in this country, in most of the world, airplanes fly with respect to the number of feet they are above the ocean. But in China, they fly with respect to how many meters they are above the ground. It's totally different. We didn't have any instruments that would tell you how many meters above the ground you were. So Doug and I, with a lot of help, worked with engineering, and we got the entire fleet modified. Meanwhile, the 300 pilots or so that flew, and in flight engineer that flew 747s, all had to have a China visa. Well, how do you get China visas for people that live all over the country or all over the world and are flying and are busy, and you go, and how do you get a China visa anyway? There was no such thing as a crew member's China visa. It didn't exist. We called Memphis. You know, the phone didn't answer either, Ms. Cleve. So we got no help. And by the way, we solved that China visa problem with 2 words: Sherry Weber. Thank you, Sherry. She, as many of you might remember, Sherry took care of that. But Doug dealt with many problems. There was pilots with problems needing help with training or health or family or scheduling. Or when a pilot's on a trip, the family might have an emergency at home and have to get hold of the pilot. They'd call our office. Doug would deal with that. Or there were disciplinary hearings where a pilot would do something wrong, and Doug would be like the judge and have to hold court. And those were never any fun. And it was incredible what some of the pilots were able to get themselves into, most of which we can't talk about here without embarrassing somebody. I think Sherry can vouch for that. But through all of this work and turmoil and airline, through all this, Marie was by his side. The love of his life, I mean, it's rock. And I really admired that. I didn't have that at the time. I do now. I was gonna tell the story of how they met, but it's already been told. But I'll just pick it up at the end, and because it could be a Hallmark movie. So she told the story. But here's Marie. She's had the flu for 2 days. She hasn't had a shower, her hair isn't combed, no makeup, or Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and she's in her old, probably her most comfortable nightgown. Opens the door, and there's her husband-to-be, and her husband-to-be is seeing her for the first time. So that's the story they told. But if you want to find out how they went on their first date, how Marie called him on the phone without telling him who she was and asked him out, you might ask Marie afterwards. It's a good story. But they always had fun family times together. They'd fly their they're playing to the Lake of the Ozarks and doing things together all the time, as you'll see in the movie here in a while. The family was always number one. But when Doug came to work, there was always a disaster at his house. There was always an electrical problem. There was a plumbing problem. There was a water leak. It was incredible. But through it all, he always managed to keep his smile and composure and make a joke out of it. And there always seemed to be somebody new living at your house. But they wouldn't just bring people in; they'd make them part of their family. That's the way Doug and Marie are. Danielle, Jamie, and Ryan, he loved you three kids, as you know. Sometimes in spite of yourselves. Where are you? Okay.
Right here.
Okay. And Danielle, now you have your own business, and Jamie is so happy going down and helping you set up the facilities, dealing with the horses and whatnot. And Ryan, he loves spending time with you, hanging out and watching sports and whatnot. But one of my favorite memories, Danielle, can you hear me? Of the three is back when you were all little, before 9/11, on January 1st, every year, your dad would take you to the Rose Parade.
Yes.
And had no intention of staying for the parade. He would get there at sunup. He would always park in the same place. And the floats were lined up at that time, nose to tail, and you could the public could walk up to them and see every single float. And they did that every year. But the thing I remember is, probably the girls couldn't last that long. This is Jamie. Was this you? Yeah, so they would walk up to first year, they walked up to some random house. Ding dong. Yep. I have to pee, can I use your bathroom? And they let them in. And they went back to that same house every year. Every year. Now, where did Frankie go?
Frankie's right here.
Oh, hi, Frankie. Okay. Frankie and Taylor, I'm talking to you two now, just you two. So come up, Frankie. Come out here where I can see you. Do you remember when you were a little girl that when Poppy used to throw you up in the air and catch you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when he did that, did you ever once think that he was going to drop you or bang your head on the floor on the ceiling? But he never did. But when he threw you up, Taylor, I mean, do you remember? I mean, you were just probably thrilled and giggling, a little girl, and I'm sure you just had total love for Poppy in your heart. And I wanted to tell you, that's the same feeling of love that he had for you, has for you. And he would want me to tell you right here that that's how much he loves you. And to carry that in your heart, in your minds, for the rest of your lives. And that goes for all of you. I told you at the beginning what my last words would be, and I wasn't kidding. Once in a lifetime, a man comes along that you can trust. A man that would lay down across the railroad tracks for you. A man that would give you the shirt off his back. That man was Doug Happ. And I miss him. Rest in peace, Doug.
I think we have a high school friend, Bob DeAndre. Where are you? Do you want to come up? Okay.
My name is Bob Derringer, Dave Dressen. We knew Doug since when did
from seventh, eighth grade.
Fourth grade.
Fourth grade. He goes back to the fourth grade, I go back to the end of the eighth grade with Doug. And our memories are of the high school years in the 50s and just totally memorable. I've got Doug's phone number in my contact list, and it says HAAAPPPY, Happy Tiger. And that's what Doug was. He was proud of his association with Flying Tigers, his service records, his everything that he did, and his flying, and just a great guy. And he was always pleasant. Doug could find the silver lining in a tornado, and that was his philosophy of life. He just exuded always being pleasant. He was always being confident. He was always looking for something. Nothing could defeat him. And I remember his racing days and with his cars that he had, his sedan that he raced at Irwindale, and he'd lose a race, and well, just because of this, we'll get him next week. It was always, there was never a defeat with Doug. It was always on to the next thing and on to the next victory. And Dave's got a couple stories. He's got a story about one of the cars that Doug had, and I'll let you tell that one.
Okay, I'll start out looking at Doug's picture here. It reminds me in ninth grade, he was voted Dreamboat of the school, and I can see why. Doug moved in next door to me, and I was in fourth grade, so that's where we met each other. And tell you kind of a scary story about Doug. We had a couple of screwball neighbors that lived down the street from us, and we used to play mumbly peg with them. And I don't know if you know what that is, but you take a pocket knife and you stand at attention and you throw it next to the guy's leg, and then he has to move his foot over to where the knife is, and you pull the knife out, and then it's his turn. It goes with you, and you try to make the other guy do the splits and fall down. Well, Doug was tired of playing, and he says, "I'm done, I'm going home, and give me my knife." And this kid said, "Well, I'm not going to give it to you." So Doug started walking off, and the guy said, "Well, here's your knife," and he threw it. The odds of doing this are just really far-fetched, but caught Doug right in the back, went in his back and missed his heart by a quarter of an inch. So he started out very, very lucky man, but we just, that was kind of a horrible story, but the good stories, I played football with Doug, and I was in 10th and he was in 9th, and we used to line up, we'd have a line of guys that were doing the running and a line of guys that were doing the tackling. And while you're in the line to do the tackling, you'd look and see who, you'd count the players, and you say, "Oh my gosh, I got to tackle a 300-pound guy." And Doug wasn't paying attention, and I would count and realize that I was going to tackle the 300-pound guy, and so I'd step in back of Doug and let him do it. All of a sudden you go, "What the heck?" So anyway, Doug, he had a weak spot. You could embarrass him real easy. And we used to all get together down at his house on Saturday and pour over his car and talk about his racing, and all his buddies would be down there looking at it. And Don Kramer's happened to go in the house, and I didn't know this at the time, but Doug was working with a speech therapist, and one of the things the speech therapist asked him to do is to sing. And he said, "Well, just sing into a tape recorder and then we'll listen to it." And so Kramer's goes into his bedroom and sees this tape recorder, and he went, "I wonder what this deal is." And
So he turns it on, and here it is, Doug singing Handyman at the top of his lungs. So he runs over to the window and he opens the window and puts the tape recorder out the window and turns the volume up, and Doug's just mortified, and he puts his hand over his face and runs in the house to get Kramer's. So it was a fun time. But I really enjoyed knowing Doug, and I'm going to miss him too.
There's just all kinds of stories about Doug, and Doug would, I always remember the parents always used to say, you need more friends like Doug Happ. you need Doug Happ. Well, Doug was a guy that would always say to like Donnie or myself and these other people, he'd say like, you ought to go do donuts on Louis Green's yard. And of course, Doug didn't do the donuts on Louis Green's yard. It was myself or Donnie Kramer's, and we'd always get in trouble. People go like, those guys are no good. But here's Doug, look, poor old Doug. Doug would be behind the scene, and he made sure that everyone, he'd always be jabbing this, and he'd be jabbing that. He'd make sure that you would always be the one getting in trouble. And it was always Doug. But, I tell you, we're all blessed to have been, have known Doug and had Doug as our friend. And really, seriously, I mean, you couldn't find a better guy. And, that's about all I gotta say.
Okay, I know many of you are standing, and I feel so bad about that. We have one more person, the president, his name's JC, and he's the president of the Flight Path Board. So he has a couple of things to say. And then we're going to show the movie that Doug wanted shown, but we have another theater, so anybody who's standing can go into the other room, and so everybody's comfortable to watch it. Okay. JC?
Thank you. This is going to be a little different because I never met Doug. I joined the Flight Path a little later, and yet his presence was very, very much felt, and still to this day. I'm just newly the president. I think I'm on my 26th day. And part of that was relaunching the Flight Path Flyers Flight Instruction Program, which Doug was very instrumental in. A lot of kids got their first wings in a certain way because of Doug. And I think he made it look so easy to do, and in launching it, I realized, no, it's not. And I can only try to do as best as I can to try to get to the level that he had clearly laid down. So I really am appreciative for him, and every time we are going to teach the kids how to fly, there's a bit of Doug in that room, which is why we're working on with the board to name that room the Doug Happ simulator room. It's not official yet. We have to go to the board, but that is something that I think will happen. So, thank you very much. And,
I wanted to mention that Greg, who was the passenger, also helped back there. Yeah, I just wanted to mention that the passenger who perished with Doug, Greg Lowe, was a lovely, lovely man. His sister's here, and he helped Doug back, and he loved teaching the students how to fly in the simulators. Okay, if you guys want to get some refreshments, it's a 20-minute video of his life, and we have another room that has lots of seating that you can sit in and watch it in there. Okay, thank you.
and look for me beyond the skies where I fly so high. I'll fly high beyond the blue.